What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F122 for My Team Career Mode Season 2, round number 5, the Miami Grand Prix. So back at Miami again. Of course, last time out in Imola we had another mechanical failure. This time it was the energy store that went. So that's 3 mechanical failures in 4 races so far. So let's hope we don't have that again for this race, and hopefully for quite a long time. Preferably no more this season, of course, but don't know how that's going to go, but at least for this race would be nice. We're going to put a couple more upgrades on our car, a powertrain upgrade and an aerodynamic upgrade, and I think we're going to have a couple of chassis upgrades come through. Also going to put level 2, spec 2 of chassis build time on as well, because we've got a bit of spare cash, should still have enough to renew Mick Schumacher's contract at the mid part of the season. In R&D, we actually move ahead of Haas going into this race, so we're now firmly there in the midfield. It's still fairly close between all teams, although, you know, there are kind of, they're not big gaps, but there's kind of the same sort of gap between each team, to be honest. So although it's fairly close all together, it does look a bit more spread out, but yeah, we'll see how we go. Last time out in Miami, we did okay from what I remember. It wasn't the best race in the world. We had a safety car, a late safety car, in the last few laps, which made things a bit more interesting, but the rest of the race wasn't massively exciting, so hoping for a bit more this time out as we go through the final corner on this first lap in Q1, and we actually bump the wall, get a bit of front wing damage, but I just had to continue on. We'd pretty much got through the corner, so that didn't really affect us too much, apart from just losing a bit of speed when hitting the wall. We do make it through to Q2, so does Schumacher, so it's good. Once again, we've got both cars into Q2, like we should be, because, I mean, our cars on R&D are like 13 and 14. I think we're like 6th in R&D now, maybe... Yeah, I think we're like the 6th or maybe 7th fastest team on R&D, so we should really both be getting into Q2, or at least one of us should be getting into Q2. And then Q2, well, don't get through to Q3. We're getting close, I think. We're getting very close to being able to get into Q3. I think it's going to be a matter of time that we will get our first Q3 appearance if our car performance keeps going up the way it is. Of course, we've just overtaken Haas, we're still right there with them, but Alfa Romeo are not far ahead of us, and to be honest, although they are, you know, slightly ahead of us on R&D, the last few races, especially Zhou Guanyu, but even Valtteri Bottas as well, neither of those guys scored any points yet for Alfa Romeo. Although they are ahead of us on R&D, they don't seem to be that great at the moment, you know. They're ahead of Haas and, I mean, even Albon in the Williams, but Albon's been doing a pretty good job. Of course, the two Haas's, both of them, I mean, Magnussen mainly, but even Schwartzman in his rookie year, doing a good job in that Haas as well. And yeah, although Alfa Romeo are ahead in R&D, I don't think they're actually quite as good as the paper says they are, so we could be looking at a decent result here, maybe just getting into the points. But yeah, we don't get into the top 10 in qualifying, unfortunately. Although it's a decent enough lap, we come to the end of this lap in Q2, and it's P13 for us, which I thought was a good result, although Kevin Magnussen gets through to Q3, and Alex Albon, P12 in the Williams. That car is the worst car on the grid on paper, but Albon is still doing some amazing stuff. Schumacher's P16, let's see what the race has in store for us.
We are here in the coastal shores of Florida for the Miami Grand Prix, which has become the 11th Formula One track held in the United States. The grandstands are packed for what we hope is going to be another fantastic race. With great opportunities for wheel-to-wheel battles featuring 19 corners, 3.36 miles long and expected average speeds of 138 miles per hour, the Miami International Autodrome will be sure to create lots of chances to overtake. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Norris, Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, and Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Magnussen, Ocon, and Alex Albon, Sainz, Shaw, Valtteri Bottas, and Russell. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Schwartzman, Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, and Pierre Gasly. Tsunoda, Zhou, Liam Lawson, and Nicholas Latifi. That's it then, it's time to go racing. as we head down trackside for today's race. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you here with us today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Alright, so with grid penalties for Sainz and Russell, Sainz still ends up being in front of us, but we are ahead of Russell. We've actually jumped up to P12. But this now means that instead of Albon starting right ahead of us, he's now in P10. He's in the top 10 now, Albon. And as we get a pretty bad start there, yeah, just positioning my car a bit too far forward, unfortunately. But yeah, Albon already up in the top 10, so now we've got Sainz splitting the two of us. So he's my main rival, I feel, at the moment, although I guess also Kevin Magnussen, who's a little bit further up the road. So 5 red lights for the Miami Grand Prix. We are underway. And we get an okay start. I mean, Bottas behind me is actually starting on the hard tyres, so we should be getting a better start than him. And we get a big dive up into turn one on Magnussen, on Sainz, on a few other cars. Albon's had a really good start though, and he's already up into P8, so he's making a great start here. And we know from previous races that Williams, in the hands of Albon especially, is quite difficult for other drivers to get past because it's pretty slippery on the straights. And this, from what we've seen last season, is not the easiest track to overtake on. There's only really a couple of spots where you can make it happen, and if you get stuck in a DRS train, that makes it even more difficult. So Albon could be in a good position here, but we continue on. We've kind of lost a bit of time to the cars ahead, and we've got Carlos Sainz behind us in the very fast Ferrari. Of course, he's out of position because of a grid penalty. His teammate Charles Leclerc is leading the way right now. And we are now just hooked up behind Ocon, who is the car ahead of us in P9. And we're just going to continue through this very twisty section. This bit here, impossible really to make an overtake through there. Your only real overtaking spots are, I guess, at the end of this straight, the end going into turn one, and also that, you know, middle kind of twisty section, but flat out section. That's really your only overtaking spots. Everywhere else is pretty much single file and rather tight on this track. So without DRS, not really a whole lot we can do at the moment. And I'm in a bit of a predicament because of having Carlos Sainz behind me. So we're just going to continue on here and see how we go. But yeah, carrying on, seeing how things fare for us. Further back on that first lap, we have Zhou Guanyu going for a big dive, and he's gone into the back of my teammate Mick Schumacher and has lost his front wing. So that is a terrible start for the Alfa Romeo driver. He's been making a lot of mistakes in the last few races. I wouldn't be surprised if Zhou Guanyu loses his seat, to be honest, at some point, maybe mid-season or next season, I don't know. But he's not doing too well. We don't really fight against Sainz because, well, he's going to overtake us anyway. He's in a much quicker car, so we pretty much just let him go through. At the front of the grid, well, Charles Leclerc leads the way. Lando Norris has gotten up to P2, so he's in a very lofty heights of P2. You've then got Verstappen in P3, but he's on the hard tyres. He's also started, like Valtteri Bottas, on the hard tyres, so potentially going to be a bit slower at the start of this race, but could come back fighting towards the end. Then you've got the other McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo in 4th, and Lewis Hamilton at the top 5, all pretty close together there, but the leaders are getting away a little bit. As we now have a look at the battle going on just ahead of us, Esteban Ocon now going for a move on lap 5 on Alexander Albon. He goes up the inside of the third to last corner, I guess it technically is there, and he's got the position done. And now Carlos Sainz will be sizing up the move on Albon. So Ocon probably stuck behind Albon a bit longer than he would have liked there, but he has got that move done now. As we now look at Lewis Hamilton having a look all the way up the back of Daniel Ricciardo. The McLaren was doing a good job at keeping actually with Verstappen at the start, but is now starting to lose a bit of pace and has got Hamilton going around the outside, and these guys are 2x2 as they come onto the start-finish straight. But Hamilton has got the position, goes a little bit defensive, but not too much into turn 1, and that's Hamilton now up to P4 for the Mercedes driver. we continue on with this battle still going on ahead. Ocon not quite able to push away from Albon at the moment, which means that Albon still has DRS and is making it very difficult for Carlos Sainz to make a move, and Sainz will be getting increasingly frustrated here, all the way down in P10. He currently sits second in the championship, quite a way behind Max Verstappen, but he is ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc after Leclerc only scored 1 point for a P10 finish last time out at Imola. As now we have George Russell making a move on, I believe that is Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. Russell making his way through the order from a grid penalty just like he did in Imola last time out, and he makes that move on Magnussen. It's a great little move, although the camera didn't really do it justice there because it kind of blocked off with all the buildings that were in front. But yeah, Russell making his way up the order. I think he's now behind us. As now we have a look at Daniel Ricciardo. He was overtaken by Hamilton, but it doesn't matter anyway because his engine has gone up in smoke, and that is a terrible, terrible day for the Australian. He was running fairly well. I mean, got overtaken by Hamilton for P4, ended up being P5, but still not good for Ricciardo there. As now Carlos Sainz finally got a run on Alexander Albon because he no longer has DRS, I don't believe, and Sainz going around the outside. May have been a little bit of contact between the two of them there, but Sainz manages to get that position, and now we're right here because Albon has not got a very good run out of this corner, and despite him having DRS, we're going to go for a dive up the inside into turn 1, make a little bit of a lock-up from Albon, but he keeps it on the racing line, but we managed to sneak up the inside, and we're now up into P9. Following Sainz through there and getting ahead of Albon, so it took a little while, but honestly that wasn't too bad for making that move. Charles Leclerc still leads the way here with Lando Norris behind, putting pressure on, but never really looking like he's going to overtake. So at the moment, Leclerc does seem to be kind of, you know, keeping this one good. In check, I suppose is the way to look at it, as we're right at the back of Sainz, but on this lap 13 I believe, we're coming into the pits for our one and only pit stop onto the hard compound of tyres. We're one of the first drivers into the pits. Change onto the hards. That is Kevin Magnussen in the Haas behind us, who also comes in for the hard tyres, but I think he's actually lost out to Albon in the Williams there. So I think he was probably behind Williams anyway, behind Albon anyway, wasn't he? But the next lap later, Russell comes into the pits, so does Sainz, and Russell has managed to jump Sainz in the pit stop there. That is big news. Big stuff from Russell and Mercedes getting ahead of the Ferrari. So now Russell has also jumped us in the pits as well. Sainz is still just ahead of us. But that is great from Russell and Mercedes getting up that extra position. This could be another great recovery drive from him as Sainz is going defensive. His tyres are cold and he locks up going into this corner. We weren't challenging too much to get past him, but I was challenging him a little bit because, you know, he was on cold, hard tyres and we just had a little bit more pace at that time. I knew that he'd get past us again eventually, and that does eventually happen, but yeah, he just ended up locking up into that corner, so I pretty much took that position. However, Sainz goes for a pretty big lunge up the inside of one of these final corners off the back straight, and he's there. We're fighting him somewhat, but I'm kind of easing off the throttle a little bit because I don't want to fight with him too much because Albon is right behind us now, and I'm actually going to have to go to the right and go defensive into turn 1 because Albon is coming at me. And we're going to be side by side through this first corner, but we're just about going to keep ahead of the tie-break driver and stay ahead of Albon, now in P10 because of Russell jumping us in that pit stop phase, but we're still at the moment scoring 1 point, so let's see how this can go. Max Verstappen has now come in for his pit stop. He's now on the medium tyres and is now showing his pace. He's caught up right to the back of Lando Norris now after getting overtaken by him at the start. Norris goes defensive, but there's not much he can do about a much quicker Red Bull on better tyres, and Verstappen is now up into P2, and his goal now is to chase after Charles Leclerc, and on the better tyres he's going to do that pretty damn quickly. Another lap or two later and he's now right on the back of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc goes defensive, Verstappen goes to the outside as they come into the corner off this back straight. Verstappen trying to go around the outside, little bit of contact between the two of them but no damage caused there, and Verstappen has got the move done on Leclerc and is into the lead of the Miami Grand Prix. Leclerc started on pole, Verstappen started alongside him, but Verstappen takes the lead, and he's going on for a fifth win in a row, 6 if you count the sprint race at Imola. But Leclerc's not going to give up easily. He's going to really push him into this next corner, and Verstappen locks up, goes wide into that corner, and that lets Leclerc through, and he's back up into the lead again. So this fight is not over yet, as Kevin Magnussen in the Haas retiring from the session there. You just saw his car parked up. Mechanical failure for him, so that's very unfortunate, although it takes a bit of pressure off us. Not a lot happening towards the end of this race, to be honest. There was this big battle. This was the battle literally for the last positions. I think Latifi is at the back of this train. It's literally both AlphaTauris, both Aston Martins and Latifi all battling right at the back of the field for the final positions. I mean, not really any overtaking happening. It's kind of a DRS train, but it was a big group of 5 cars all very close to each other. We continue on, and yeah, this last part of the race for us was kind of boring and a bit bland. We were losing time to Sainz up ahead. Not a lot of time, to be honest, but we were losing time to him. And we were actually pulling away quite well from Albon behind. So we kind of found ourselves in a little bit of no man's land with like a 2.5 second gap in front and behind, as now we have Lance Stroll going for a move on Lewis Hamilton, I believe that is there, and he's up into, I think, P4 or P5, so that's good from Stroll. I mean, he's nowhere near his teammates. He's actually on the same strategy as Verstappen, going from hards to mediums, but yeah, making his way up the order, but still nothing amazing from the Canadian. As on the second to last lap, Valtteri Bottas, he's also on that hard to medium strategy, going for a move on Albon, but he's made contact with him through the last couple of corners, and that is enough that his left end plate on his front wing has come off, and he's going to come into the pits, and that's going to drop him down the order. So that's unfortunate for Bottas. He was looking like probably a P11 in this race, but in the end, Leclerc managed to make this work, and he will win the Miami Grand Prix. Somebody finally stops the reign of Max Verstappen, all because of that lockup. Leclerc manages to get the win, and it's great for him from a pole position to the race win. We end up finishing P10, so it's another 1 point for us. We made it to the end of the race, which is awesome. Russell gets driver of the day for another great recovery drive. It was a pretty good one, but a bit boring at times.
And that's the checkered flag. What an amazing victory in what has been a great Miami Grand Prix. Talk to me, Ant. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection. A shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix. And they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
So Charles Leclerc wins the Miami Grand Prix. He's back on the top step of the podium, once again denying Max Verstappen of another win here of 5 in a row. Verstappen ends up finishing P2, right behind Leclerc. Lando Norris in P3. It's another great result for him. Norris I think that's 3 podiums in a row for Norris, so he's doing a great job in that McLaren, considering it's actually, the McLaren is slower than the Mercedes on R&D, but especially in the hands of Norris, he really seems to have the measure over his teammate and over the 2 Mercedes, although Russell seems to be the quicker Mercedes at the moment, but of course has had engine penalties the last 2 races. We end up P10, one point for ours. Schumacher ends up P13, so it's an okay result from him, and I mean, 1 more point in the championship is always good for us. Ricciardo and Magnussen both DNFing from this race. In the Drivers' Championship, Verstappen still leads quite considerably. The 2 Ferraris, though, swap positions. Leclerc now second, with Sainz in 4th and Norris in 3rd. We are P12, just ahead of our teammate with 1 more point than him. And yeah, a few changes down the bottom with the no point scorers. And then in the Constructors' Championship, nothing changes at the top and in the middle. We are still P6, but now 1 point ahead of Haas instead of level on points. And Alfa Romeo and Williams move up to 8th and 9th respectively, with AlphaTauri 10th and Aston Martin now in 11th. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.